we are speaking the taboos that would get us in trouble and may get us in trouble, right? To be honest, but it is the path to freedom. Speaking our truth is the path to freedom.
Hello and welcome to How to Be a Terrible Daughter. This is the comedy podcast about narcissistic abuse. And it's also the podcast where Megan and I hate your parents for you if you just don't have the energy. So
we are always happy to spread the hate when we're not busy spreading the love. So who are we? My name is Megan Caper, and I am an occupational therapist and an intuitive healer. And this is my lovely cousin, Elizabeth.
I'm Elizabeth. I'm Megan's cousin, and I'm a psychotherapist and an artist.
Do you know what? Last night, I started drawing in my sketchbook again for the first time since I lived in Rome when I was taking art classes. And I realized that I hadn't done it for so long because my mom was the painter. She was the artist. And it wasn't safe for me to also be an artist. But I'd forgotten how much I love just doodling and sketching. I just sat there for like an hour drawing random things out of my bizarre subconscious.
Yay.
It was really fun. Anyway. All right. The topic today is not my budding art skills. I know you're all really disappointed. The topic today, we're actually doing a mailbag episode because now that we've had a couple episodes out there, we're getting questions from people, which is really exciting. And we love that. And so we wanted to answer some of your questions because not only are these questions that it takes a little bit of time and thought to answer, but it's also, the reason we're doing this podcast is some of these things are so universal to people that have had this experience of narcissistic or emotionally immature parents. I think it's helpful to answer them for everyone.
No matter where you are on the journey.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Should I read the first question?
You certainly can.
Okay. So the first question is, when I mention the podcast to people, they get prickly about the term narcissist. How do I respond? Meaning, like, if I say, oh, yeah, my mom was a narcissist, or I'm listening to this podcast about parents who are narcissists, they get prickly. I think that's what they mean. And also, I wish people had been that protective of me. I think meaning like they're being protective of the narcissist and being like, that can't be true, but not being protective of the victim, which, yes, that is a pattern.
Yeah.
You want to respond to that? Do you have any thoughts?
I do. I was thinking initially about it being about the term narcissist, but I think that there's something else in there which is a little bit different, which is that when we tell the truth, we are breaking a social taboo, and that maybe it doesn't matter whether it's the term or not, although oftentimes that is it's very sticky for people. It really is about, I am telling you an unpleasant truth in a social situation where we're pretending that we're open, right? Yeah. But we really aren't. And that you don't speak badly about other people. I also think that some of it is that the narcissist knows when they can get away with breaking those taboos and when they can't. And that it's actually not about connecting or telling the truth for them. It's about them doing whatever it is that's going to benefit them the most. And so we're looking for, being seen and heard, and we're looking to connect, but those aren't necessarily things that they can do. And so we kind of get the response that's actually really made for them because they're the ones who have broken the taboo first, which is by abusing us, right?
I think many, many people who were raised by narcissists are actually incredibly high functioning when it comes to things like having a successful career and a job, right? Because we had to learn how to be independent at such a young age. We're so good at it. And so I think that when people look at us, we don't look, quote unquote, I'm using finger quotes, we don't look like a victim of abuse because we look like we
Hmm.
have it all together, but actually having it all together can be a trauma response, right? It's this hyper
Hmm.
independence and this perfectionism, which are trauma responses to growing up with a narcissist. But I think that, if I say to people, my mom was abusive, I think when they look at me, they're like, but you're fine,
Yeah.
because all of these outward markers of adulting, do you know what I mean? Like having a job and having a place to live. And like I have all that going on, right? And I'm
Hmm.
actually pretty successful at it. But that success is in part due to, perfectionism and hyper
Yeah.
independence and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think part of it too is that we have ideas in our mind of what victims look like, right? And you see
Hmm.
this even when like victims of sexual assault, people are, question them because
Yeah.
why didn't you say something right away, right? It's sort of that whole thing of like we have these ideas of like how a victim should act or what they should say. And so I think when you say to someone I was abused, they have to then expand their own definition of what abuse can look like. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that.
Yeah. I also think that to kind of go along with what you're saying about being functioning is that you're not triggering people's pity. And I wonder if part of that also has to do with how we were taught to communicate, because I remember this is a bunch of years ago being called on my communication because like I remember I was sick and I was like not feeling well or whatever, and I had to cancel at the last minute a friend, something. I don't know if I left her a message or whatever, but like she gave me this feedback, which is like, you told me that you were feeling terrible and whatever, but I couldn't hear any of that in your voice or how you talked or anything like that. And it was really like I was trained not to show vulnerability. I was taught to not ask for nurturing because that actually would provoke narcissistic rage, you
You
know?
got a gray rock. You got a gray rock no matter what the situation.
Yeah.
You've
Yeah,
got to be,
exactly.
just as featureless and uninteresting as a gray rock.
Yeah.
I think, what I've heard a lot too from people when I mention it is I hear the phrase, well, that's just how she is. And it's
Yeah.
like, yes, and how she is abusive. There's this weird disconnect of like, that doesn't make it okay that that's how she is. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not, like, how
Yeah.
does that make it okay? And I feel like, again, that is just people not wanting to admit to themselves how bad it is or admit to the situation. It's just much easier to blame the victim and sort of create this idea that they're somehow exaggerating or whatnot. But yeah, what ends up happening is that ends up protecting the narcissist and protecting the abuser. It's hard to sit with someone in their trauma. It's easier to just dismiss it on an emotional level, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I think people are just, they themselves may not have the emotional sophistication to actually sit and be like, wait, tell me more. Because that I'm
Yeah.
having a disconnect here. That doesn't make sense with the person that I know that you're talking about, but I believe you and I'm willing to sit with you and listen to you. So tell me more, which is, I think, what we all want,
Yeah.
but that not a lot of people actually have the ability to do.
That's true. I think it's tough because, we do need to find each other and we need to find community and these things are coming up. But there are some people that you don't need to talk to about this. And I actually just had a recent interaction with someone and I realized that I had been sort of giving feelers out, like just talking because, my mom passed away a couple months ago. And so that kind of thing comes up and I'm grieving, right? And so I remember I said something and this person kind of came back with this sort of like non-committal response. My response to that was like, is it okay for me to talk to you about these things? And their response was, well, yeah, you could talk to me about anything. But emotionally, there was nothing there, right? There was just absolutely nothing there. So what I really kind of had to come to terms with was that They may be saying all the right things or whatever, but if I don't feel safe sharing with this person, that's enough. If I am not responded to with open arms, like I actually had someone say to me a couple days ago, I'm really mad at your mom for how she treated you.
Mm.
And it was just like, it wasn't a big deal, but it was like, this person heard me, and I didn't have to fight for that. All I had to do was share a little bit and then have them show me that they were a safe person to share more with.
I think that's a good point. I mean, to go back to the question, so if people get prickly about the term narcissist, that may just be a person who it's not safe right now to share this with. They're not ready. Doesn't have anything to do with you, right? They're not ready.
Yeah.
Which is fine. They're on their own path, their own journey of growing like we all are. And if they're not ready, they're not ready.
Yeah.
And that's, again, why it's important to find community of people that do get it and that are ready. Because it can be very isolating if not.
Yeah. It's so lonely and it's tough because it takes so long to get to a point where you're actually willing to open up to people about it, right? I mean, first you have to go through all of the years of your brain rewiring itself to get to the point where you realize and can put words like, oh, that was trauma or that was abuse. And then there's a whole path to actually getting to a point where you're willing to say that to another person. And then you get gray rocked yourself, right? Or you get Darvoed yourself in your own way. And I think also what I'm also realizing is that, we had talked about the isolation and the splitting between people, but I also think some of it is that to a greater or lesser degree, everybody in the inner circle is traumatized and in shock and whatever. And so we can't be there for each other. Right. And so the non-committal response could be that the people in your life are so shut down, right? That they're also traumatized and that they can't meet you where you are.
Yeah, that's true. Let's move on because I want to make sure we have time for as many of these questions as we can get to. Do you want to read question number 2?
Yes, absolutely. My mom asked me to do things for her, like make phone calls, etc., that were inappropriate for a child to do. Why was that? And also, you've mentioned flying monkeys. What are they?
They're monkeys that fly around in the sky. You've never seen them? No, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
I'm so tempted to make a Wayne's World reference. That's really gross. Okay.
Yeah. So parentification is sort of the first one, and flying monkeys is the second, but they're really, really, really similar. So narcissists figure out ways to get other people to do their dirty work for them. And those other people that do their dirty work for them are called flying monkeys. Now, the flying monkeys don't realize that they're doing the dirty work. They actually think that they're doing something helpful for the most part, but they are absolutely sort of solidifying and perpetuating the abuse themselves. So why would your mom ask you to do things like make phone calls, et cetera, that was inappropriate for a child? It was because they knew on some level that this thing was wrong and they were trying to get someone else to do it for them, essentially. Not consciously. They didn't know it was wrong consciously, but on some unconscious level, they knew. And if you made the call and got a bad reaction, then you could be blamed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You were the one that could be blamed. Whereas if they made the call and got a bad reaction, they'd actually have to take a moment to reflect on their behavior, which they're absolutely not willing to do ever. So they asked you to do those things because, I think there's two reasons. One is so that they can get out of the blame. And the second one is, narcissists have some really, really deep, unresolved childhood trauma, right? Yeah. And so they're looking to be cared for. And they're looking to be basically to have a parent, and they'll reach out for that feeling of protection and security and love that they never got as a child to like anyone around them, even people that aren't appropriate, like their own kids, right? They'll sort of put their own kids in a position to take care of them. Either could be something like a phone call, or it could be emotionally as well, right? They sort of want their own kids to take care of them the way a parent would, like reassure them that everything's okay, or validate them, or tell them they love them, right? They're looking for all of these things that they should be giving to their kids, not the other way around. And so that's why they're doing it. It comes from their own insecurity and their own, like they're trying to stay out of trouble, right? They're trying to have other people do the things that they know they're not supposed to do or they shouldn't do.
Mm-hmm. I'm really glad that you brought up the trauma and the vulnerability, because I remember my mom trying to get me to do stuff and me refusing, and her really having this tantrum and really just getting this sense of like that she saw herself as a child in a room full of adults, and she's just like screaming and trying to be heard. That's like, well, okay, but you're the adult now. I think there's also something else, which is I think that some of it is also about complicity and loyalty, which is I'm thinking about, the movies in The Mob, right? Where, there's one person who's like thinking about getting out and he's not so sure about whether this is a good thing. And that's the exact moment that the boss tells them to do the terrible thing. Right.
Yeah.
And so it ropes them back in. And, and also it can shift the blame, but it can also be, oh, no, 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 I'm roping you into this.
And it's like further indoctrination into the cult, right? Because if you do something that is wrong, like you now know that it's harder to get out because you've already like transgressed some sort of ethically, ambiguous thing, right?
Yeah.
And so now if you try to turn around and say, but they made me do it, it's like, well, yeah, but you're the one that did the bad thing. What are you saying? They made you do it, right? It's part of the difficulty with this kind of abuse is it's psychological, is why we call it psychological abuse, right? Is because it really, really messes with your idea of right and wrong and, whose fault it is, where it originated from, right? Like all this stuff gets really, really confusing. Yeah.
I'm thinking about, and this is not necessarily something that I endorse. I don't really quite know how I feel about it, but like, later on, right? My mom would say to me, like, I want you to go talk to this person or whatever. And I would just lie to her. In some ways, I would tell as much of the truth that I could, right? And I would be like, okay, yeah, like I'll, and I might say something like, look, I'm not necessarily going to defend you or whatever, but I am going to talk to this person. But the truth is that I never gave the message to the other person. I would go to this person and be like, wow, things are really tense. How you doing? Like, what's going on? And then I could go back and say, yeah, I talked to this person.
Yeah. Yeah.
I enjoy the fact that I lied to her. And I was able to have small moments with people.
I think there's a certain point where you reach a certain age once you become an adult where you're finally able to see behind the curtain and see the game they're playing. And then once you see the game they're playing, you then figure out how to subvert the rules in a way that you can, right? You can't subvert all of the rules. Yeah. But there are certain ways that you can, and you realize that they're so self-absorbed that they won't notice that you subverted the rules and did something else. And so you sort of figure out these little places where you can not be a flying monkey when they ask you to, right? Not do exactly the thing they asked you to do, and then you tell a white lie about it. Did you go talk to that person? Yes, I did. I
do also remember that a lot of the time later on, I would just be like, you don't need me to do that. You're strong and you can go and talk to this person yourself and you don't need me to do that. Like you're not helpless.
Well, that's holding a boundary. That's essentially saying like, I don't feel comfortable doing this. It's your responsibility, right?
Well, yes, but I think it's like really, really well hidden, right? Because it's really like, look, you're acting like a victim. You're not a victim. I'm not going to do this for you. It's not okay for you to ask me. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to nurture you and I'm going to encourage you and I'm going to tell you wonderful things about yourself so that you go and do the thing that you need to do, whether you do it or not.
So basically, you gentle parented your mom.
I guess so.
All right, let's keep going. Oh, do you want to read the next one?
Sure, I can do that. Why is it that I always feel like I'm doing something wrong? It doesn't seem to matter what it is. If it's coming from me, it's wrong.
I know that one well. There's sort of this constant feeling like I'm in trouble or people are mad at me or like I'm somehow not doing a good enough job. I could do more. Yes, I resonate. Same person who wrote this question. Same.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? What are your thoughts?
I think what comes to me is really that when you are raised by a narcissist, it's an extension of this expectation that you're an object, which is that you grow up believing reflexively that any human response inside of you is wrong, right? If you get angry or if you can't meet a commitment or if you think something that doesn't seem nice or something like that, then that all of a sudden that there's something wrong with you and that you've transgressed in some way. And I saw that a lot doing therapy with my clients. And what kind of came to me was, when you're brought up by a narcissist, you come out of the chute and it's like they give you a manual on, how to be. But instead of giving you the manual about how to be a human being, how to be a person, you're given a manual that's for robots. And robots, because they're not living, right? They don't like get hurt and heal, right? They don't grow, they don't develop. They are either functioning or not functioning, right? They're either functioning or damaged. And you can repair or discard, really.
But I never felt like I was functioning well enough. Like it was never like I was never a good enough robot. So like I figured out how to be a pleasing object to my mom, right? Like how to do things that the probability was it would make her happy, although you never really knew. But I didn't ever feel like it was enough. And now that voice is definitely internalized where I never quite feel like I'm doing enough. So
yeah,
it's like a robot who it's like a off-brand robot that can never quite be as good as like the name brand robot, but you're constantly trying.
You're not even top of the line, right? Yeah. There's always like you're malfunctioning or you're not doing what you need to do. And I see so much shame. And if you really look at, okay, well, what am I ashamed of? Right? These are things that, if the person across from me was feeling and thinking doing those things, of course I'd have tremendous compassion for them. So like, why not me? Like what makes me exempt from understanding and all that kind of stuff? It's really unfortunate.
It is really unfortunate. And I think a big part for me of healing from this kind of trauma has been like a deep, deep dive into self-compassion and what that really looks like. And that it's not just, compassion isn't just when people are necessarily feeling bad or have done something bad, but it's also celebrating when they've done something good, right? I mean, compassion is about, and that's almost been the harder part for me, right? Like, I feel like initially pretty early on, I sort of figured out like, oh, the way I'm talking to myself in my head is not nice. Like, I need to be nicer to myself, right? Like, I need to talk to myself the way I would talk to, a friend who's going through a hard time, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that was harder for me is when I did something right, or when I succeeded at something, or when I, met a goal or even made a goal, to be able to say to myself, like, you're doing really well. Good for you. Like that to me is a huge part of self-compassion. And it was sort of the harder part for me of being able to really be there with myself through the good and the bad. It was like easier for me to be with myself through the bad than the good. I really had to learn. how to be
Mhm.
proud of myself. It's a challenge. Such a challenge to me that like I look at other people and I'm like, how do they do that?
Yeah. Wow. But like, I remember someone saying to me, well, that's no big deal. It's fine. You did enough or whatever. Like, what? Like,
Yeah.
I did enough? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
That's never true.
Yeah.
Actually, my therapist, she said to me, like, well, are you ever going to be a good enough mother? I was like, no,
Yeah.
just no. And then it was like, oh, well, there we go. Right.
Yeah.
That's, the rules of the game, right? If you're following the rules of the game and the rules of the game guarantee that you're going to lose, really helpful to question.
Well, and the rules of the game with the narcissist also, there's always something to nitpick on,
Yeah.
right? So there's never a way of doing something that there's not some fault they can find. And so for me, I think I start doing that to myself. I start looking for the faults, right? Well, yeah, I got an A on this test and I got all the extra credit, but, my writing was a little messy on number 5, right? Like,
Seriously.
like there's just this way of finding fault in yourself that I think comes directly from this relationship because, you had to find the fault in yourself before the narcissist did so that you could
Absolutely.
correct it, so that you could, like, there was less of a chance of the rage coming out, right? So
Yeah.
it was this constant feeling of trying to find the faults and fix them before the narcissist noticed,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. And it was about survival.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All
Yeah.
right. We have time for like one more question before we get into our crazy mom off. Do you want to pick of the questions that are left? Which one do you like?
I think you should pick.
I should pick?
Yes.
I love this one because it actually came up for me and a friend of mine who has a mom that's a narcissist this week. So I have a reoccurring thought pattern where I wonder if I am the narcissist and I convince myself that I am, but I'm so sneaky that I have everyone fooled. Can you talk more about why this happens and what I can do?
Do you have an immediate response? Because
I mean, my immediate feeling is like, I'm so sorry that that's happening to you. Like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
that's just, it's such a mind fuck. It's
Oh,
such a mind fuck. And it happens to all of us who were raised by narcissists.
yeah.
It just breaks my heart. So, like, I don't really have what can I do? I don't have an answer. My initial response is just an emotional one, like, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. Like, I feel for
Yes.
you.
I know for me, part of the reason why I'm on to this is literally because I've had so many clients say this to me, like, but what if I'm the narcissist or whatever? I'll be like, okay, honey. And I know for me, like, it's so complicated and nuanced. I think there's several different ways that the narcissist imprints themselves on you and also uses it as it's a form of Darvo, right? Which is reverse victim and offender. And I catch myself doing it, not even to that degree, but definitely. And I don't know if this is helpful for anybody else but me, but I went through the diagnostic criteria over and over and over again. Like I would crack open, stop walking on eggshells, and I would does this person do blah, blah, blah. And it didn't always help. I think it was
Yeah.
still a lot of like, okay, no, like you're
Yeah.
maybe I also did ask at least one therapist, are you sure?
Oh, I
Are
just
you
asked my
sure?
therapist this like 2 weeks ago because it
Yeah.
came up and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And she said to me, actually, she said, you have none of the symptoms of a narcissist, and you have every single one of the symptoms of somebody who was raised by a narcissist. That actually helped me. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
the number one thing that I think is true and can be helpful is narcissists would have no interest in finding out if they were a narcissist or not.
Yes.
Like the fact that
Yes.
you're asking the question means
Yes.
you are willing to do self-reflection. And that
Yes.
willingness to do self-reflection is something that no narcissist has ever, well, I won't say no narcissist has ever. Very rarely in the history of humanity has a narcissist ever been willing to do any kind of self-reflection.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're willing to ask that question and even look at yourself and entertain it as a possibility in and of itself means you are not a narcissist. Because think about the narcissist in your life, your mom or your dad or your partner, whoever it was. Were they ever willing to stop and be like, is it me? Am I the problem?
Right.
No, never, not once. Right. Yeah. So, that I think is sort of the lifeline that I hold on to. Like the fact that this thought entered my mind means it is not the mind of a narcissist.
Yeah, absolutely. And they do so much stage magic, right? To keep you from really looking clearly at the difference between you and them. And part of it is because they will tell you that you're like them when they have something to gain, right, from that. And then they'll tell you that you're a piece of shit. And one of the worst things that you can imagine a person to be is a narcissist, to be perfectly fair, right? And I also think that there's something about trauma, right? Which is like this thing about like imprinting, right? Like, do you ever silly putty, right? There used to be like the funnies, newspaper funnies, and the silly putty, you could just put it over and pull it up, and then there would be like an echo.
Would be on the silly putty, yeah.
Yeah, and I really
dating ourselves, by the way, with that reference, but for other people out there used to be newspapers that were printed on paper using ink. You would open them and turn the pages.
Yeah, right. Yes, exactly. But they force themselves on you psychically in a way, and it becomes very hard to see yourself in any way, first of all, that's different from how they see you, but also like they're your first person. Yeah. Right. So it's really complicated.
And I think, this is why you and I say this to each other all the time. I say it to my friends all the time. And I think it's even in the outro of our show. Like, you're not crazy. I just want to say that to like everyone listening here. You are not the crazy one. You are not the crazy one. That behavior that the narcissist is doing, that is crazy. You're not crazy in whatever reaction you're having to it.
And I want to add something there, because if I were listening to this podcast, I would be thinking, okay, well, Megan doesn't mean me, right? Because I can think of 5 different things that I find questionable about my inner workings, and she doesn't know them. So she could be talking to every other person who's ever going to hear this podcast except for me, right?
Yeah. Right. But, no, I mean you. That person right now that's doubting whether I'm talking to you, I'm talking to you. I'm talking right to you.
And part of it is that, remember, we kicked out all the hate listeners in the first 2 episodes.
That's true. So we did.
If you're here, and this is episode 8, I mean, who's going to start with this one, right? So, but it's like, if you have listened to more than like 10 minutes of this podcast, you're not the narcissist, because you know what? There's nothing in this for them.
Yeah, there is a diagnostic criteria that if you've listened this far into the podcast, you are not a narcissist. We're going to try to petition to get it into the DSM-6.
We're the Rorschach.
We are.
Rorschach test.
So if we didn't have time to answer your question in this episode, I'm sure we'll do another mailbag episode. But yeah, please keep writing in with those questions. We love getting them. We love being able to answer them.
Absolutely.
Okay, it is time for our mini crazy mom off, where we try to one up each other with stories of crazy shit our moms did. You have a story about being bullied. I would love to hear your story.
Yeah. Whew.
Ready for the crazy. Bring it.
Okay. So I was about like 13, 14. I went to an all-girl high school, and my religious education was really the only co-ed educational opportunities I had, social opportunities. So I was still going after my bat mitzvah. I was still going to Hebrew school, and things were contentious and toxic with some people, some other fellow students. And one day, when I came home or whatever, I was still so upset that I couldn't hide it, which that tells you something. And, I was upset. And so my mom asked me the story. And so I told her, and then she's like, who is it? Who said these things to you? I told her. And they're like, well, I know his mom. I'm going to call them right
Oh
now.
God, no. My whole back just seized up when you said I know his mom.
Yeah.
Woo,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. And I'm not done.
I know. I know. But I know your mom. And even just I know his mom, I am already scared. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. So, of course, I am standing there in the room. So first, she kind of, I don't remember exactly what she shared with the mom, but I think it was, it was definitely something like, I need to talk to your son. So he gets on the phone. And again, I'm only hearing this. I'm not hearing anything he's saying or anything like that. And I can't remember the whole thing, right? Because this is a dramatic event. She was very critical of him. And then she said, your father would be really ashamed of you if he knew what you had done.
You said that to someone else's child?
I am not done.
I'm ready.
His dad died.
No, what the fuck?
Within that year. I had no idea.
Wait, was he already dead or he died? He's
dead.
She told someone that their dead father would be ashamed of them within a year of their
Yes.
Oh my God. What?
Yeah. And I remember just being like,
that is just cruel. I mean, that is like evil queen level cruel.
And would totally explain his behavior. Right? Like that would explain his behavior.
Of course he's acting out. His dad just died.
His dad died. Like, what the fuck? And then, of course, here making me complicit because I'm defending my daughter and blah, blah, blah. I mean,
it made it look like you asked her to call is what it made it look like, which you did not.
It's so horrible.
But even if you had asked her to call, at whatever age you were at, you wouldn't have understood the psychological ramifications of someone's father dying. Her job in that moment was to talk to you and be like, hey, honey, his dad died. Oof, that's really, really hard. And sometimes people act out she should have parented you is what she should have done, right? She should have guided you and helped you and made you feel better and explained the world a little bit. But no.
What? I don't know what you're talking about.
A poor teenage boy and shamed him from his dead father. That's wow.
And I'm sorry, but the shit he said to me was nothing compared to what she said to him. I mean, who knows how many therapy sessions he's had to be in and be like, when I was a teenager, I was mean to this girl and her mom and I wake up in the middle of the night sometimes and I think about how my dad's ashamed of me. I mean, fuck. I mean, and this self-righteousness about I'm going to get justice for you because what this kid did to you was so horrible, but I'm going to do the exact same thing, only 100 times worse.
Yeah, it's retribution. There's such a strong sense of retribution with narcissists. And that's what I was always really afraid of, was the retribution, right? Yeah. If they feel like they're wronged, they're going to come back 50, 100 times as strong and show you what you did. You think you feel that? I mean, it's the story we shared last time about my mom hearing about when I had cancer. And good, now she knows what it feels like to suffer. That was retribution, right? It's
absolutely.
The narcissistic retribution rage is abso-fucking-lutely terrifying. Terrifying.
Well, and that's what makes it so frustrating when people get all upset, using the word narcissist. It's just really? Oh, come on. You're going to get upset about that?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Oh my God.
Yeah. So anyway.
I'm so sorry. I love you. She sucks. That's really the worst parenting example I think I've ever heard. It's so bad. Bad parenting to you, oh my God. Well, and I'm also thinking that poor mom that she talked to originally had just lost her husband.
Yeah, thank you. I knew there was something else missing.
Yes. My God. No empathy. This is what we mean when we say narcissists don't have the capacity for empathy. Like
Yeah.
no empathy at all for either of those people going through that or for you. Like no empathy for anyone.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Absolutely.
I'm
It's
so
like,
mad at your mom.
oh, good. Good. I mean, and this is the thing, which is like, even I wouldn't say that to my mom. I would never say to my mom, your mom or your grandmother or whatever would be ashamed of you. Although, I mean, there's such a laundry list of things, I wouldn't say that.
I got that all the time from my mom. She constantly told me that my dad was ashamed of me. She told me to basically stay away from
Oh
him
my
because every
God.
time I was in his presence, it reminded him of like what a shame I was. What a
Uh-uh.
so again, this is from the narcissist playbook. Like there's certain things that they just all seem to say, like certain themes, like shame and dog poop, apparently, are the two of them.
Yeah. I am like the learning edge of my personal work. I am just barely starting to get a glimpse of this idea that the things that I am trained to feel shame are exactly the very things that are going to liberate me and make me stronger, and that is very deliberate,
Yeah.
and that whenever I like, if I get shut down or if I'm trying to hide something or blah, 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 it's like, no, 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 wait a minute. Actually, no, no, no. These are the keys to your freedom.
Well, and
And
that's why we're doing this podcast, you and I. Like
yeah,
it for us, it's we are speaking the taboos that would get us in trouble and may get us in trouble, right? To be honest, like, but it is the path to freedom. Speaking our truth is the path to freedom.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, give
Can
me
I tell
yours.
my story?
Oh, yes. I've heard this
Okay.
one. I love this one.
So we talked a little bit about flying monkeys. One of the questions was about flying monkeys, was about the narcissist getting other people to do their dirty work for them. And so I thought I'd tell this story because it's such a like perfect flying monkey story and is also a little bit of a horror story of someone coming back from beyond the grave. So it's fun in that way too. So my mom passed away. It's probably been about 4 or 5 years at this point. She passed away. And a year and oh wait, I need to tell the story of her will. There's a little bit of
Oh,
backstory to this story.
oh,
So
yes.
my mom didn't leave anything to her children because why would you? She left a decent amount of her money to setting up, I guess, like a trust so that her paintings, her artwork, which had never sold when she was alive, could be maintained in like an air conditioned, climate controlled art storage unit. And then she also hired someone to try to get her art shows because in her narcissistic delusion, she thought that she was this brilliant artist who was just misunderstood in her lifetime, but that after her death, she would gain the fame that she always deserved. Okay, so that's sort of the setup for this story.
Oh,
So I knew this, and I knew that there was this woman out there who was trying to get my mom posthumous art shows. But whatever, I just sort of let it go. But about a year and 4 or 5 months after she dies, I get in my email it wasn't an Evite, but it was like an Evite. It might have been like paperless post or one of those types of things. But it was an invitation to a gallery in Beverly Hills that was doing a show of her work. And I didn't want to be on this list. It was also right around my birthday. I think I got the email like the day before my birthday. So I thought to myself, as a birthday present to myself, I am going to have good boundaries and I am going to contact this gallery and I'm going to say, please take me off your mailing list. I'm not interested in having anything. I thought about just letting it go, but I was like, no, I'm going to stand up for myself. I don't want to get any further emails about this or any of our other shows. So I look online for the name of the gallery. And the name of the gallery was it was two people's names. It was clearly a couple. So it was like, the John and Susie McGallagher Gallery of Beverly Hills or something like that.
okay.
So I look it up online and I find the phone number and I call the phone number. And the person picks up, but they pick up not being like, hi, this is the McGallagher Gallery or whatever. They're just like, hello. And I could hear it was a cell phone. It was that like very particular type of connection. So they go, hello. And I thought, well, I must have gotten the wrong number because normally with a business, people answer, with the name of the business. So I said, hi, is this the John and Susie McGallagher Gallery? And there's a pause. And this man says, Megan?
Oh,
And
I
my
forgot about the start.
stomach drops because how does he know who I am?
Yeah.
I don't know these people. I've never heard
Shit.
of this gallery. I don't know anything about this gallery, but I know it has something to do with my mom. And so I'm already on high alert. How does this man know who I am?
Recognize your voice or your number, but your
Yeah,
mom wouldn't have your number.
I don't know. Well, so I said, yes. And he said, oh, yeah, this is John McGallagher. And I said, oh, okay. Well, I got an email from you yesterday about an art showing for someone named Caper. And I just wanted to tell you that I'm not interested in, getting any more emails about this show or any other emails about this person.
Mm-hmm.
And there
Good
was
for
a
you.
long dramatic pause. And then the call disconnected. And I was like, what just happened? Like, again, I'm already sort of in spooky land because how did he
Right.
know my name? And why didn't he answer the phone with the name of the gallery? Like, what's going on here? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I call back and it goes to voicemail. And the voicemail does say, like, this is so and so gallery, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like,
Right.
okay, well, it was clearly a cell phone. Like, maybe he was going through a dead zone or whatnot. So I waited about 10 minutes and I called back. And again, it just went straight to voicemail. And I think I left a message that time just being like, hey, we got cut off, but I don't want to be on this email list anymore, blah, blah, blah. And I later found out, I'm trying to remember how I found out. I did a Google search, I know, but I don't remember exactly what I found. But I found out, I put pieces together and realized that these people were friends of my mother's from the art world when she was alive.
Mm-hmm.
And that they were probably having a show for her as like, honoring their friend who had passed away. We're going to give her an art show,
Mm-hmm.
using this money that had been set up in this trust or whatever. And that somehow my mom had, and she wasn't supposed to have this information, but she'd given them both my email, my personal email, and my phone
Oh.
number so
Oh.
that when I contacted him, he knew who I was.
That's really fucked up.
And so this, yeah, it is fucked up. It's a perfect example, so he, in his mind, as the flying monkey, he thought he was doing a good thing. He thought he was giving his friend's daughter one more chance to come in and see her mom's artwork and like realize what she'd done, like blah, 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 blah,
Mm-hmm.
blah, right?
Yeah.
But I was just floored that even from the grave, my mom was able to send flying monkeys after me and
Yeah.
be spooky and weird and freaky over a year after she had died.
I'm wondering if his surprise was that you didn't sound like a complete monster with the things that she might have said about you or whatever that
Mhm.
like wow, she doesn't sound psychotic or
Right. That I just said, hi, is this so and so? Instead of like immediately being like, you're talking about me. I don't know what she
right.
would have said. Yeah. I mean, I know for a fact that she told other people, some of whom I knew and some of whom I didn't know, that I was very mentally ill for pretty much the entire time after I went no contact with her. That was sort of her story, is that I'd become mentally ill and that's why I'd stopped talking to her. Which
Mm,
actually, now that I think about it, was your mom's story too, right after you went no contact with her.
I suppose so.
Yeah. So hot kettle black.
Well, I also, you had said it to me this way. I can't remember who said it to you, but it was like your mom was such a narcissist that she left her money to herself.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's like, can you even do that? Apparently you can,
You can. You
right?
can set up a trust and leave your money to yourself. So
Yeah.
for anyone out there wondering what to do with their money after they die,
Yeah.
you can leave it to yourself and confuse everyone.
And one of the great subtle things is that it's not like her friends, that the money went to that. And it's not like she had really good friends who would be willing to use their own money to do that.
Right.
Right.
Yes, that's true. Let's talk quickly about tools we used this week to get through the week.
Well, I'll tell you something that I started doing was because of this thing about, listening to my inner child and whatever. I also started talking back, not talking back like talking back, but like just to kind of say, like, I'm tired. I'm tired and I'm overwhelmed. I'm sorry I can't take care of you as well as you deserve. And, that's just kind of what's going on. And that really changed things inside.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I've been, this is sort of not just this week, but this has been the last couple weeks. Something I've been doing is that I've been investigating letting myself have goals again. For me, I grew up in this narcissistic household. And then I, at 30, got cancer. And then after I got cancer, I ended up getting a chronic illness that was misdiagnosed for 20 years. So I was sick for 20 years. And I'm just now starting to like regain my health and heal. And I realized that one of the things that I'd let go of was having goals because I was just trying to make it through day by day and not feeling well enough to have the mental bandwidth to have like any kind of long-term goal. But now that I have that physical and mental bandwidth back, I am starting to think about like, oh, what is it I actually want to achieve? And like, what are the steps I would need to do that? And it didn't even occur to me that I'd let go of having goals. I mean, when I was younger, I had goals that were like, I got to get out of this house and go to college far away, right? So I would work towards that. Right?
yeah. China.
Yeah. But it hadn't really even occurred to me that I'd let go of that. Or even, when I was in my 20s, I started a business, right? A tutoring business, and I had goals for that business. But it hadn't even occurred to me that I'd let go of having goals until I realized that I didn't have them. And it was absolutely because I just didn't have the physical or emotional spoons to have a goal. And so I just want to say if you're in a place right now where you're just trying to survive, whether that's financially or physically or emotionally, like I don't want anyone to beat themselves up for not having goals because I did. It wasn't good. And it's like now I'm able to actually have compassion for that. I just thought like I wasn't doing adulting well. I didn't realize how much it was that I was not well, that I wasn't physically well. And then 20 years of not, anyone who has a chronic illness will tell you that 20 years of not feeling well absolutely takes a mental toll on you.
Yeah.
So I've been like just putting feelers out of like what goals do I want to have. So that's my tool.
That sounds so beautiful. I'm so excited. I can't wait to hear what those desires and goals are going to be. I think they're
I don't
going to
have
be
any actual
amazing.
goals yet. I've just been like playing around with the idea of like, what would that even be? Like, what would a goal be that I'd want to do? What's something I'd want to work for, towards?
I'm actually learning a whole bunch.
Oh, thank
It's
you.
true. It's true.
So thank you for sticking with us for this long. We think you're amazing. And I know you're like, how can you think I'm amazing? You don't know me. Oh, but I do. Again, if you're listening to this podcast, I know some really important things about you, and I know you're amazing. So if you have any questions for us or comments or feedback, please send us an email. We are at h2, like the numeric 2, h2bterrible@gmail.com. This also, you can find it on our Instagram, which is Terrible Daughter at Instagram. You can find our email. But yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Like I said, we're going to do more of these mailbag episodes because we really want to make sure that we're tailoring this podcast to the questions that you have.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And also, at some point, we do want to branch out, even though we could go for 10 years talking about our own crazy moms. We do want to branch out at some point, to have a competition between listeners.
Oh, like a listener submitted crazy mom off stories.
Yes.
Absolutely. If you have a batshit crazy narcissist mom or dad story that you want to send to our email, it will be anonymous, of course, if you want it to be, but we want to like each individually read each other's stories submitted by listeners, and then everybody wins or loses, depending on how you're looking at it in that situation. But yeah, so this week we invite you, if you are sick of being accused of being a terrible daughter and of doing everything wrong or not doing anything, well enough, we just want to encourage you to embrace that. Be the villain, be the terrible daughter, because why not? It's kind of more fun over here.
Yeah. We've got cookies and blankets and stories.
Ooh. Ghost stories this week. So exciting.
Seriously. Oh my God.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Bye.
Thank you for listening. We'd be so grateful if you'd follow or subscribe and rate and review our new podcast on your favorite podcast app.
Make sure to share it with friends, family, or anyone that you think may benefit from this content.
And as a final reminder, you are not the crazy one.